Hello everyone, my name is Noah and welcome to this tarot flip through. We are going to be looking at the Fifth Spirit Tarot today. It is by Charlie Claire Burgess and it is a 78 card deck and guidebook. I'm going to open this up. It's published by Hay House, it says. And I saw this deck at Barnes and Noble, I believe. And I don't usually buy decks on a whim. I say that, although it tends to be what happens. I like to think I don't buy decks on a whim, but lately that seems to have been what it was. Not often, but it's not something I've planned usually. And what drew me to this deck is, if you read the back, it says, Tarot Beyond Binaries. The tarot thrives in liminality and nuance. The more we work with tarot, the more we realize that everything is fluid. Gender, meaning, even time. We're all creatures of earth, air, fire, and water, bound together by the fifth element, spirit. This deck expands notions of gender through the juxtaposition of traditional titles and queered imagery. It encourages you to queer your practice by listening to your intuition, your personal symbolism, and your own lived wisdom. Now that's queer. And it says it cost $28.99 US and $38.99 Canadian. And it says that the box design is by Nick C. Welch, and Charlie Claire Burgess designed the front cover. We have a few cards on the back. I really, really like the colors of this tarot. I tried to match it in our setup for today. It is very dreary out, so I have my cup of coffee. And I have a lavender vanilla candle lit as well, just for the vibes. So we're going to open this up. And as usual, I am completely new to this tarot. I am going to look through it and give you my first thoughts. This is not going to be a review. This is merely going to be what I notice as a person who really loves and appreciates tarot, and as a person who does art for a living and likes both the more spiritual, mystical aspect of this practice of tarot, and a person who enjoys getting to see the art of other people. So I'm, going to be looking at it from those two angles. So here we have the guidebook, and this section here says everything that was said on the back of the box. I am going to read you the blurb about the creator. It says, Charlie Claire Burgess, they, them, is a queer and trans non-binary tarot practitioner, writer, artist, and deck creator. Charlie is the host of the Word Witch podcast, that sounds really interesting, and teaches tarot workshops online and in Portland, Oregon, where they live with their spouse, Erin, and a staggering number of houseplants and fantasy novels. Follow along at thewordwitchtarot.com. So yeah, we have a very book-like guidebook. It looks like we have an introduction, talk about reversals, queering your tarot practice, how to queer your language, try using they, them to refer to people in the cards or mix it up between pronouns. Aside from being a great opportunity to practice singular they, them, this can help expand your conception of the cards and of gender. Try referring to the High Priestess as he, the Emperor as they, the Kings as she, and so forth. And take note of how it changes how you feel about the archetype when I read. For others, I use they, them for all the cards, which I find helps make them available to people of all genders. Scrap the masculine/feminine duality. If you've read about tarot elsewhere, you've probably heard of the cards having masculine or feminine energy. The problem is that this duality is essentially and irrevocably based on gender norms. When soft, nurturing, emotional cards are feminine and strong, authoritative, rational cards are masculine, that only reinforces gender roles that have been controlling and limiting all of us, trans, cis, gay, and straight, for our entire lives. There's no reason to keep using these terms grounded in stereotype, misogyny, and toxic masculinity. There are other terms for the duality out there. Projective and receptive is the pair I tend to use, but honestly, I don't think we need to truck with a binary duality at all anymore, which brings us to our next point. Think beyond the binary. Non-binary thinking isn't just about gender. When we think beyond binaries, we recognize that there are more than two options, that those options aren't mutually exclusive, and that perhaps they are not even opposites at all. We can apply to this almost any binary, masculine, feminine, good, bad, right, wrong, happy, sad, strong, weak, logical, emotional, us, them. When we embrace non-binary thinking, we recognize false dichotomies and we understand that all of these are a spectrum or even something less linear like a color wheel. Non-binary thinking is a rejection of absolutes and an embrace of the cyclical, the multitudinous, and the innate complexity of living, which is, by the way, pretty much the moral of the major arcana. And then it goes on, and we gives a little bit about tarot spreads, beyond the binary spread. Everyone's a little queer spread, 5 spirits spread, and then we go into the cards, which is what I am most interested in right at this moment. I want to see what sort of formatting and information the author gives. So we have a little blurb about the major arcana, the minor arcana, and then about each of these suits. And now we go into the major arcana. I really do like these end papers they have between each section. The illustrations are really cute, and I really enjoy them. We have, so about a page for each of the major arcana. No pictures, but that's fine. You don't really need a picture. Let's see about the minor arcana. It is sorted by suits, and it looks like the minor arcana each gets about a page as well, which is nice. I find a lot of times the minor arcana is given such a small amount of space, of breathing room in the guidebook, that I find that I often can't connect with them, especially if I am using a new-to-me deck, a new-to-me system, or perhaps it's just not a card I've thought about in a while. So yes, I really like how this guidebook's set up, and I'm excited to fully read all of the introduction stuff on my own time. So far, so good. I would like to say, before we get into this, obviously I'm very interested personally in this tarot deck, and that is because I myself am non-binary. I have one other non-binary specific deck created by a non-binary creator, and all of the characters in the deck, or all of the cards, all of the beings, however you want to put it, are to be considered non-binary. And that is the Numinous Tarot by Cedar McLeod. I also have a link to that review I can put in. It is an older video of mine, but I think it still does a good job representing the cards. Alright, one last thing before we get into this is I really like this person here on the front. I really like how they have a little bit of a belly sticking out, how they're, you know, very soft looking. And yeah, I don't know, I think also the double chin and the way the face is drawn, it just kind of reminds me of how my body is shaped. So that makes me excited for perhaps more body diversity in this deck, as well as other types of diversity. So I'm now going to slide the cards out. They're connected by this little paper strip, or contained, I guess, which is nice. It's a little less of wastage. We have I'd say it's a satin cardstock because it's smooth, a bit like a glossy card would be, but it is definitely non-reflective, or at least not very reflective like a matte cardstock would be. So yes, that is the texture of the cardstock. I would say the thickness is a great thickness. I really like it. I really like the color palette as well. We'll be getting into that as we go. The backs are gorgeous as well. They're playing a little bit of a trick on my mind, though. My mind is saying that it's blurred, not blurred, but like it's kind of washed out color-wise. But that's just a me thing. I don't think that everybody's going to have that issue. So yes, we're going to get started. I'm going to zoom us in a little bit so we can see the cards in greater detail, and we'll get started. Alrighty, so let me take a sip of my coffee, and we'll get started. Here we have the Fool. And it's a little bit, I don't want to say different, but it is in a way, because I would say they're a lot further off the cliff than I see a lot of times, but I also like how the person kind of looks like they're floating on air, like they're already stepping on the air, sort of into a, you know, in Indiana Jones, where he has to trust that he can walk across the, you know, the optical illusion bridge, if you know what I'm talking about. So it's kind of trusting that you'll be able to fly, that sort of thing. We do have the little pupper, little doggo, in the knapsack, and I think that's a really cute way to include the dog. Has both the number and the name. The borders are pretty thick, but they are plain, and I feel like they They don't stand out that much, so in my mind that's a good thing. They won't be too distracting, but I could see people wanting to trim them down. Because while they aren't distracting, they don't really add anything. But I don't have a problem with that. We have the Magician. I like how the wand is very much, this wand that they're holding is very much just kind of not really physically there. It's there, but it's not physically there. We have, I think that's Mercury tattooed on their arm. And then instead of actually having all of the physical tools that we traditionally see in the Magician, the sword, or the pentacle, the cup, and the wand, these are labels on potions or ingredients for the potion that this person's making. And I really do like that. This art style, I would say, is very minimal. It's not completely minimalist, but it is definitely more minimal, and it is more of a digital style. So we have the High Priestess here with their pomegranates, a sickle it looks like, maybe some rosemary. I'm not sure what the other herbs are meant to be. They have the word tarot tattooed on their arm, all sorts of different tattoos, and we have the moon cycle phases up there, and I do like the sort of box that they're holding. It kind of reminds me of Pandora's box a bit, but it definitely could mean other things. I feel like that's kind of a fun imagery to have in a High Priestess card. You could definitely see, you know, what's inside the box for each person that receives this card is going to be different, and you can kind of, you know, not really like dive into it physically, but you can stare at it, look at it, think about it, meditate on it, you know, that sort of thing. We have the Empress, and we have the sickle and the pomegranates again, but now the handle of the sickle is visible and the pomegranates have been cut into. I do see the words art tattooed on their fingers, along with some other different symbols. And I was reading the Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr last night, and I reached the Empress card, and the author was talking about how the Empress is a lot more, in her mind, associated with creativity than often thought of. So I think that's interesting that it is also in this card, and it was something that really I kind of had to stop and think about when I read the entry for the Empress. We have the Emperor. I love the compass up there with the gears and the tape measure, the screws, the nail, the screwdriver, the blueprints, all of that, because it kind of speaks to a more analytical mind than a masculine mind. This definitely encompasses emperor energy, but it does not, you know, it's not a king, you know, not a traditionally like leader type masculine role. So I really like that. And maybe I'm just, you know, extra fond of this card because as a child I did actually ask for a compass, that type of compass, for Christmas one year. I did also ask for a protractor the same year. And then we have the Hierophant, and I do really like how this person is not particularly religiously drawn. I think that that is really great. I do notice the card catalog down here, so they're definitely a librarian. Again, something that I like because I went to school for librarianship. I have a master's degree in that, so perhaps I'm just more drawn to it than I would be otherwise. We have the Lovers, which is the card on the guidebook and the card on the front of the deck. Something I noticed that the Lovers is very often the card used for a lot of the imagery for the deck. And I really do like this because, in a sense, you're looking into yourself. So there's a message of perhaps self-love or finding yourself, but it could also be two different people coming together, not necessarily romantically. You also have that sense of teamwork or reciprocity that can come from two people together in a really great way. And I will say that we have the apples and this little bit of a snake, so we definitely have the understanding of this was originally the Rider-Waite-Smith, at the very least, what the original interpretation was of the Garden of Eden, and this kind of brings us back to that imagery, however subtly. Now we have the Chariot, and this is one of my favorite things in the major arcana in different decks, is when whatever thing the character of the card is riding or using is powered by them, like roller skates or a bicycle. They're the ones propelling themselves forward, and I do also appreciate that this person is sweaty and they have a scraped up elbow. I feel like that makes it more realistic. So yeah, that's nice. We have Strength. Again, really appreciate the love and trust on the knees. I feel like that's a really important part of strength that people forget about. And I do believe that's supposed to be a pit bull, and I love me a good pity baby. They're so cute. So, again, a fan of that. I really do like this color palette. It feels a bit different from the other color palettes we've seen thus far, but it is all still kind of that muted, earthy undertone, so they definitely fit together. We have the Hermit, some age diversity in this deck. I like the patches on their pants and on their jacket. I'm a big fan of visible mending, again, so it just kind of draws me towards it in a way it might not otherwise. We have the Wheel of Fortune. It's interesting that the person is blindfolded. And we have all 4 of the elements, as well as the sun and moon, and that just kind of shows that cyclicalness of it. We have Justice. Again, something that kind of leads back to the original Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. It was the imagery of the Justice card is usually very Egyptian in portrayal, something I always found kind of jarring, as a lot of the rest of the deck is not. And it's also kind of, in my mind, culturally appropriative. Just kind of like, I'm going to yoink this myth and we're going to use it. I also really appreciate the fact that Justice is walking away from the House of Law. I think that really shows the difference between actual justice and the justice system. They do not always line up. So I think that that is very interesting. Again, we have the heart and the feather, so it relates back to the original imagery, but it is more relevant and more connected to the rest of the deck. We have the Hanged One. This is one of my favorite ways to refer to the Hanged Man without it being gendered. You can just say the Hanged if you want, but I like the Hanged One personally. And I think this is very interesting that they are not just tied up by one small rope from their foot, but they are completely bound. They cannot move. They must continue through this process, whatever this process is going to be. And yeah, that's interesting. And then we have Death. So we kind of have the Maiden Mother Crone energy, but not quite. It's more nuanced and not so much a focus on a woman going through the stages of her life. It is just, you know, the stages of life. And we do have that sort of, you know, it is, I think, implied that this person gave birth to this child. We do not know, but they are breastfeeding them, and perhaps a partner or a loved one, and then an older person, and then death. And it really just kind of shows then with the moon up here that's, I think, supposed to perhaps be a fertilized egg, like an embryo. It just really shows that cyclical nature, and I really do like it. Again, it's not the Maiden Mother Crone, but it is that energy in a sense. But I relate to this a lot more than I ever did the Maiden Mother Crone. We have Temperance. I do really like the sunrise over there, and then on land and in water. It really shows that liminality. Have the Devil. I like how instead of demonizing things like bondage and whatnot, we have the puppet strings instead. I feel like that's a more sex-positive portrayal of the devil. I always found that really odd in decks when they went, you know, like full hard into that. We have the Tower, which is someone's house burning down. So yeah, it really, that's a very good modern depiction of the Tower. It's, you know, it's someone's home. It's not, you know, not very disconnected at all. Then we have the Star. And this person, it looks like, has had top surgery without having their nipples put back on, which is a great representation, since that is something a lot of people choose to do. I also enjoy, in the background, it looks like there's the Tower, perhaps. So this is the card after the Tower, and it's just them, you know, taking care of themselves in the aftermath and that sense of hope. We have the Moon. This person's walking through a very spooky swamp. Looks like there might be a printing error on my moon, but that's okay. And now we have the Sun, and I think this is supposed to be, if I could not throw the guidebook around, I do believe this is supposed to be the author and their partner, and perhaps their dog, their beagle. I really love that when deck creators put themselves in their deck, because obviously in a deck, they bring themselves into it anyways because they're the ones creating it, but it's a really nice way to like sort of memorialize them and be like, yeah, this is their deck. But yeah, I really like this Sun card. I feel like it's very evocative of the feeling that the Sun card makes me think of. And then we have Judgment, and I do believe this is the same person as the person who is on the Temperance card. It looks very similar to them if it's not. And I feel like that's a very interesting callback and connection, and I feel like that could be really interesting for when you're working with this deck. And we have the World. Very, very close to the original symbology of the world and original design. So now we're into the minor arcana, and we have the first suit, Wands, so Ace of Wands. And this is very much a sort of pip style deck. It's not quite entirely pips, but we do have, you know, just two things or one thing and a little bit of detail and background. So I think that might be a little bit more challenging for me, just because I really like to see the full illustrations and take my meaning from that. But that doesn't mean that I won't enjoy working with this deck and that I'm not up to the challenge, because I certainly am. We have the Three of Wands. I love the idea of the hot air balloons as wands. They would definitely also work as swords, but there is a lot of fire involved in hot air balloons. So that's an interesting way to put that. We have the Four of Wands. Now I want tea. I have coffee, but that's making me want some tea. We have the Five of Wands, and I really like the hornet's nest. I feel like that is very evocative in a way that I would not have thought to consider in terms of the Five of Wands. And we also have the baby pomegranates that have shown up in the major arcana, although I suppose they could also be something like crab apples. We have the Six of Wands, the Seven of Wands. I love the salamander. Again, a great way to bring in that fire energy. Eight of Wands. This one's interesting. Nine of Wands. And 10 of Wands. Now we're moving into the royalty. The suit cards? No, the... What are these called? Why can't I remember? Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to call them the royalty cards because I can't remember the right name for it. We have the Page of Wands. I really like this person. The Knight of Wands, the Queen of Wands. It says 9 Lives Ballroom. The King of Wands. And we have the Ace of Cups. Court cards, that's what they're called. We just finished with the court cards. Ace of Cups. It's interesting. The Two of Cups. I like that. I wish I knew the name of this knot. It reminds me of the knot that is used, and I know it's used in things like rock climbing, but I specifically use it in knitting and crocheting, that sort of thing, when I want to connect two strands together without leaving tails or anything like that. It's called the magic knot, and I know that's not the real name for it, but yeah, that's really interesting to me. That was how the author, the artist, chose to represent this card, and I like it a lot. We have the Three of Cups. I like those cookies. I think that, I don't know, I was going to say that might be a Greek wedding cookie, but it also looks like it might be a fortune cookie. We have Four of Cups, Five of Cups, Six of Cups. I like this sort of collage style. Like, all these things go together, but they're clearly not from the same scene, but they still kind of fit nicely around each other. Seven of Cups. Ooh, I like that. With the snake coming out and looking at the fish. You have the Eight of Cups. That's a very good representation of the Eight of Cups. And this is one of the more scene-like ones that we've had so far, compared to the others. Nine of Cups. And 10 of Cups. There's a goldfish. There's one too. Now we're moving into the Page of Cups, the Knight of Cups. I wonder if this person is on the same roller derby team or roller skating friends with the Chariot. We have the Queen of Cups. I like that, how it's a person doing some divination. They have pendulums. It looks like maybe a scrying bowl, crystals, a card deck, perhaps runes. We have the King of Cups. Kind of reminds me of Mr. Rogers, honestly, with the sweater and the shoes off. I wonder if that was the intent. Ace of Swords. Two of Swords. Ooh, I love that Luna Moth. That's very pretty. Three of Swords. Oh, I like that. That is a very poignant depiction of a card that is usually indicative of heartbreak or betrayal. We have the Four of Swords. Love me a good cicada and a worm. Five of Swords. Six of Swords. Oh, I like that with the nails. That I don't know how to put into words why I like it. I think I need to think about it more, but I do definitely like it. We have the Seven of Swords. All of those things that have been stolen. But if you look, one of the eggs in the nest has been, you know, broken as well, and I would assume eaten rather than hatched. So the person, the thief, the bird, has also had something stolen from them. We have the Eight of Swords. Nine of Swords. That's pretty grim, but I mean, it is the Nine of Swords. The Ten of Swords. I like that. It's beautiful. It's haunting and sad, but it's beautiful. Have the Page of Swords. The Knight of Swords. I like the bike as opposed to the traditional horse. The Queen of Swords. The King of Swords. I like this one. The Ace of Pentacles. Oh, I like that with the sprouting bulb. That's a very apt description of the Ace of Pentacles, given that the Pentacles suit is, you know, very earthy, very practical. We have the Two of Pentacles. I like how that they're representing the pentacles with seeds. I think that's a great idea, not something I would have necessarily thought of. The Three of Pentacles, tools, since it has to do with working well with each other. The Four of Pentacles. I try not to just say, oh, I like that. We have the Five of Pentacles. Interesting, because the bread's there, and that's something that, like, the bread's there, and usually within the Five of Pentacles, it's very much there's nothing to eat, there's nothing to have. And in this case, there is some food, but there's no one to eat it. It hasn't been given to the person who really needs it, which I think is an interesting comment. We have the Six of Pentacles. Seven of Pentacles. I like that. The Eight of Pentacles. Again, we have that sort of collage-y vibe. Nine of Pentacles. That's a great interpretation of the Nine of Pentacles, all that food. We have the Ten of Pentacles. We have the Page of Pentacles, and they have that bulb from the beginning. They're going to nurture it. Have the Knight of Pentacles. We have the Queen of Pentacles. All the house plants. And the King of Pentacles. Like that. It's interesting. So here we are with the deck. The sun is starting to go down, so I'd like to finish this quickly. And yes, I'm very happy with this deck so far. I do like the way it shuffles. I pretty much exclusively shuffle like this. I think this is called waterfall shuffling, but I'm honestly not sure. But I like when when going through a new deck to take the time and pull a card and share it with all of y'all just to see what it is. And we come up with the Moon. Feel free to interpret that as you will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you a good idea of the contents of this deck and the sort of vibe the author is going for and all of that. Of course, everyone is going to connect with decks differently, and that is completely valid. So maybe you are not as thoroughly in love with this deck as I am, and that's fine. I hoped that these videos give you all a chance to see decks and look at them. Feel free to subscribe, to like the video, dislike the video if you disliked it, you know, ring that bell, all of that silliness. And thank you for joining me in the Stet Studio today. Goodbye!